In the Catalina foothills, just outside of Tucson, Arizona, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie lives alone. But she's not alone. She has family that lives nearby. Now, Nancy's not very mobile physically, but mentally, she is sharp as a tack. Nancy's daughter is Savannah Guthrie, host of the Today Show and former Court TV correspondent. On Saturday, January 31st, Nancy was dropped off by family members at about 9:30 at night at her home. Between that time and the Sunday morning church service that she never misses, something terrible happened inside her home. Nancy's family was first alerted by folks at the church when Nancy didn't show up. That alone was a reason to worry. Then when the family went to Nancy's house, they couldn't find her. By 11 a.m., they called police, and almost immediately it was clear to investigators that a crime had been committed, that Nancy had been taken forcefully from her home. It began as a missing persons search, and investigators worked quickly. They worked thoroughly, but found no signs of Nancy. Then things changed, and the homicide squad was brought in to work the case. Meanwhile, Savannah and the rest of Nancy's family are asking for tips, help, and a lot of prayers. Tonight, we have the latest from the sheriff, plus the details about an alleged ransom letter sent to the media as the search for Nancy Guthrie continues. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. The story, the mystery continues. I want you to just take a moment and think about this. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. When I cover these stories night in and night out, there are certain stories that really bother me, and they are the ones where people victimize children and seniors, the people in our society who we should be protecting and helping. And when they become the victims of a crime, it gets under my skin. And our law takes that into consideration. When you victimize someone who is a child or someone who is a senior like Nancy, the penalties are more severe. That's an aggravating factor. So our system of justice recognizes that. 84 years old. You should be enjoying every single moment that you have because you've lived this life. You've learned so much. People should be speaking to you to learn about things that you've experienced. You should enjoy your family, and you should just enjoy each and every moment. And for someone to take this nice 84-year-old woman has everyone angry, to say the least. This is just like when we see children attacked. These are the most vulnerable in society. Now, the thing about Nancy, and the reason that there's a big spotlight on this, obviously, is she has a celebrity daughter, Savannah, who used to work. I used to work with Savannah at Court TV. She went on, became and is currently the host of the Today Show, right? She's at the top of the food chain in the news business. And obviously that puts more of a spotlight on this. But the question is, does it have anything else to do with what happened here? Is there any connection, or is this just a coincidence that the victim of this abduction has a daughter who is extremely famous? Otherwise, why on earth would anyone go into a house in the middle of the night and grab an 84-year-old woman? Why would you do that? Under what circumstances, what purpose? Is it some sort of a vendetta? Or is it a kidnapping? Is it a kidnapping for ransom? Well, there's an alleged ransom note that is now circulating in all of this. A note that was sent to the media. From someone, somewhere. So it's part of the story now. And for many people, that would maybe answer the question, why on earth someone would abduct this 84-year-old woman? Because she has a very famous daughter who obviously has money. And you're holding her to demand money, right? We've seen this movie a million times, but I've never seen it with an 84-year-old woman who needs her medication, an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker. So the question, the sheriff spoke today. These guys are working, and women are working long, long hours on this case. Trust me, they are. But he's taking the time to answer questions to let the public know, because he's also asking for the public's help. But take a listen to him when he's asked about whether or not any demands have been made.
Have any demands been made by kidnappers?
We have all kinds of investigative leads we're working on.
Okay, quickly, you tell him, he obviously doesn't want to give up specifics, right? He'll give some information, but not all information, but kind of sweep that question. But there was another question about a ransom note.
You were asked if there was any ransom, and you didn't say no. You said we're following all leads. Does that mean a ransom has come in?
We're following all leads we have. That's all I can tell you. We've got hundreds of leads, and it's from you that produce those leads by telling people we need help, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm not going to get into all that.
Again, not denying it, right? So we're getting leads, right? Because it's high profile, everyone knows about it. You get more leads, you get some bad leads, but you may end up getting some good leads. Attention in a case like this is always good for law enforcement and the family trying to find their loved one. Now let's get to the ransom note, because there is a ransom note. Who wrote it? I don't know, but it's been sent to the media, including our parent company, Scripps News, specifically our affiliate in Tucson, Scripps News Tucson. Take a look. Scripps News Tucson received a ransom note referencing Nancy Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's mother. It makes a specific demand for several $1 million in Bitcoin by Thursday, and threatens to kill her if payment is not received by Monday. Here's the key. It also makes specific reference to two pieces of evidence at the crime scene, which we cannot authenticate as legitimate. KGUN, that's the affiliate in Scripps in Tucson, has forwarded the full contents of the note to investigators and authorities. The note is real. We just don't know if it's legitimate. So it's been sent to Scripps News in Tucson. We know at a minimum TMZ also received this note. So it's been sent to a bunch of places. Who sent it? Is this the answer to the question? Take a listen now to the sheriff. Oh, this is what the sheriff said. This is the statement that the sheriff made afterwards about this. We are aware of reports circulating about possible ransom notes regarding the investigation into Nancy Guthrie. We are taking all tips and leads very seriously. Anything that comes in goes directly to our detectives, who are coordinating with the FBI. So that's where we are right now. That is like the big headline. There is a ransom note. We know there's a ransom note because our parent company was sent one of these ransom notes. Where else they were sent? Were they sent to the family? Were they sent to the sheriff? Not sure. They're not saying. But the bottom line, a note was sent, so there is a ransom note. Is it legitimate? Where is it coming from? How do you handle this at this point? Let's bring in our think tank. Joining us tonight, criminal defense attorney, former head New Jersey County prosecutor Bob Bianchi is with us. along with criminal defense attorney Sydney Rushing, and finally, national parenting and family relationship expert Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Welcome to everyone. Bob, reaction here. Ransom note being sent out to the media. We don't know where else it's been sent, if it was sent to the family, to the sheriff, etc. What are your thoughts right now about this note?
Brings us back to the Riso case in New Jersey, Vinnie. You may remember a number of years ago with the Exxon CEO. Bad. This is not a good thing. I don't like the idea of the note that they're referencing things at the crime scene. That is, in my opinion, the person trying to say we are not a black ops situation or somebody trying to take advantage. We're the real deal. This is the person that we have, and here's our signature and our calling card. So that's kind of frightening. Right now, I can just tell you from the prosecutorial standpoint and investigative standpoint, what's happening right now is going to be making sure you can deal with information management. So if you can imagine, there are these tips coming in from all over the place. Each one has to be run down, and you have to shuck the wheat from the chaff because there's going to be a lot of maniacs too. You said it's good there's public attention to it. Yeah, it's also bad because a lot of people are going to be calling in, maybe with good intentions, maybe with not, in order to get some notoriety. So there's going to be a lot of manpower and woman power that's going to go into this. And then the electronics and all the kind of investigation happening here, I could just tell you from having been involved in stuff like this, not of the magnitude of the celebrity that we have here, is that this is really daunting and like a needle in a haystack kind of situation if these people did this with any level of skill.
Sydney, if in fact this is an abduction, a kidnapping for ransom, it seems not to be random, obviously. You'd have to know that it's Savannah's mom. You'd have to know that Savannah's mom is living alone and is very vulnerable. I mean, at a minimum here. And I'm wondering,
right.
what is your gut telling you tonight as we get wind of this ransom note?
So it's telling me, like you said, I don't think that this is random in any way, because again, they knew the address, they knew the things, they knew to take off her Apple Watch, which of course we know is connected to her pacemaker, and that's how they said that they kind of are assuming that at 2 a.m. Sunday is the last time, you know, she was connected to it, and that's when they took her from the home. And just to know all of these things and to know that she's someone that they could take and potentially, you know, with this ransom note, obviously this is a money grab, and them taking it to the news is you know, it's a loud statement to be made. And that's why the sheriff is also keeping a little bit quiet about what information they have, what they have at the scene, because obviously this ransom note is labeling two very specific things that have to do with the crime scene. So it's kind of like, hey, we're legitimate here. But my gut is telling me that this is someone that she knows or should know. I also think that there's going to be some tech that they're going to hopefully be able to go in and get some more clues about who was she contacting anyone that day? Was anyone reaching out? Was she expecting somebody? So that way maybe they have like more leads like that. Obviously we know they're doing everything they can, but tech can take us really far away these days.
Dr. Sue Kornbluth, she's 84 years old. That's, to me, that's the fact throughout all this, and obviously has some physical limitations. Early on, the sheriff was talking about medications that she needed as well. The one thing about Nancy Guthrie, though, is that she's sharp as a tack. She is smart. She knows what's going on. She's aware of everything. So if she's being taken, she's aware that she's being taken. This is scary stuff. This is bold, if in fact this is what is happening here. Does your gut tell you that this ransom note may be legit?
I mean, Vinnie, I do think the ransom note could be legit for several reasons. One, I think it's important because it shows that, you know, they know these details, right? So if they know these details, they probably have her somewhere. My guess from the beginning, though, was that this is definitely connected to her daughter, Savannah. And I think that possibly this could be a crazed fan that was targeting Savannah and wants to get back at her in some way, saw the mother on television with her, saw her as a target, and went after her to get some money. That is what I think is going on here. In terms of her mother, and the way that she's feeling right now. And, you know, I pray that she is still alive, which I do believe she is at this time. She is filled with panic and fear and, you know, all kinds of things going through her mind. And at the age that she is, you can be as tough as you want, but, you know, your mind and your body are connected to one another, and you experience pain and panic and fear very different than you do if you are younger.
Bob, let me follow up on what you said before about the Exxon case. What happened there? How was that handled?
Well, it was a massive investigation, as you can imagine. And I think that the thing that's relevant is, and I think to this particular case, is, I hate to say this, but we're just being real here. I mean, one of the things the investigators had to deal with that they did in the Riso case is the victim alive? Is there, even if you pay the ransom, is the bad guy or woman going to either kill them, or are they already dead? In the Riso case, in which case it was a murder case, the person was dead. But back then, Vinnie, you had a lot more of an opportunity and ability to be able to run leads down. And I'm not saying that there's not going to be here, but one of the questions they're going to be having, let's think about it, should we pay the ransom? The question becomes whether or not there's a person that's going to be alive, and whether the person that's abducted her is going to take the chance that by giving her back over, they've created even additional evidence that could identify them. This is a really Hobson choice, especially for somebody who's got the medical condition, because we don't even know she's alive right now. I'm sorry to say it. I'm just being real here. That's what's going on.
And I appreciate that, and I think everyone understands that. I mean, this is such an unusual case because the victim is 84 to begin with, and that's what sets it apart. Like, how on earth can you manage to hold on to her? What, for, they say, given a deadline of Monday? That's over a week. Does she have the medication? Are they taking care of her? Sydney, do you think, as we sit here tonight, that there's a chance that a ransom could be paid and that somehow, some way, she could come home? Are you seeing a realistic chance of that? I think that everyone obviously is hoping for that, but what are you thinking? Right.
So, I mean, I think that there's always the chance for that. Sometimes, you know, we see that, you know, when the ransom is paid, it, you know, the opposite, you know, comes through where they bring the person, they bring them home. But again, I don't know how likely it is, because once they return her, right, this isn't just a hands-off thing. Now she, like, you know, as they've said, she was very sound mind. She's very smart. She's quick-witted. She's going to have the information that's going to come back and bite them in the tail. So, you know, it's one of those situations where, are they actually going to, you know, hold up their end of the deal with, you know, if the ransom is paid, are they going to give her back? And is she available to give back? Because I agree that, you know, if they may want to get the ransom and then just tie up those loose ends so it doesn't come back and bite them.
All right, our think tanks are going to stick around. When we come back, the press conference today. The sheriff was asked a bunch of questions, but didn't provide a ton of information in his answers. We're bringing in our own investigators to answer those questions. Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates a respected dentist and his wife found shot to death inside their home. Investigators follow a trail of surveillance, travel records, and a past relationship that won't stay buried. Did Monique Tepe's ex-husband plan a deadly trip across state lines to carry out murder? Tonight, we investigate.
What are you reporting?
Fire. The tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
The defendant repeatedly shot and killed his brother and then moved to murder the rest of the family inside the home.
Their sprawling mansion set on fire.
Paul and Keith were not only brothers but business partners.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
9:45, 9:30, 9:45, we were told she was left at her home by the family. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the family got notice from somebody at church that she was not at church. They went to the home, found her to be missing. That's the timeline. from Saturday night 9:45, we'll say, to Sunday morning 11 o'clock.
So a media event, a press conference by the sheriff today, and the sheriff opened it up to a lot of questions. So I wanted to go through some of those questions and the partial answers by the sheriff, but I want to get, a more thorough answer to some of those questions, so I'm going to need some help. Let me bring in my special guest joining me, retired police detective, forensic educator, Dr. Michael McCutcheon, and founder of American Special Investigative Group, Toby Braun, is with us. Thank you both for being here. So the way I want to do it is I'm going to go, we'll listen to the question from the sheriff, we'll see the way he answers it, and then you guys can put a little more perspective and context into all of it for me. Thank you for being here. Let's start with the first question about cameras at the house.
We noticed that the camera on the front of the house is missing. Do you believe the perpetrator purposely took the camera?
Don't know that. We're looking into that as well.
All right, let's start with the cameras. Dr. Michael McCutcheon, we know that that's a big part of every investigation these days. Give me the camera footage, the video, like everything's on video. If there's cameras at the house, will they be able to get what video was recorded, even if the cameras themselves have been taken?
Well, that's a good question. It depends on who the provider is. Some of the and if you're paying for that service, some doorbell cameras will only let the user look at it, but it doesn't store it. You have to pay an extra fee for that. So it depends on the type of camera that she had installed. And his question or his answer of whether it is part of the criminal investigation or not is a legitimate answer. People do have cameras that aren't working or they're disabled for whatever reason and not criminal, but it looks criminal. But what they will probably do is if they can't get the stored data, if it does have a storage, I know her phone, from what I understand, was left behind, so it may have the videos stored on her phone. If not, they're going to look at all the doorbell cameras in the neighborhood, and at the late night, that's pretty useful because there's not a lot of cars traveling at that time, so they'll be able to see whether there's vehicles driving by other houses, and they'll be able to track vehicles at that time. But if her phone's there and she's paying for that service, they should be able to get some video if it does show anything.
All right, another question about some other suspicious person in the neighborhood. Let's take a listen.
A report of a suspicious man a few doors down last week. Is that anything that you guys are aware of?
I'm not aware of it. My detectives may be. There's a lot of detective work being done, and I just can't get into those weeds or even discuss with you what they may not have learned.
All right, Toby, obviously not sharing a lot of information, but how significant would something like that, how much manpower, time will they put into that?
Well, I can certainly tell you that these guys didn't go out there that night alone. They did their pre-reconnaissance surveillance. They've been out there before. They knew exactly what time to go there. So going back to Michael's point on getting that video, I think it's also important to get video from prior to the incident because, again, these guys were probably out there. They probably did that pre-attack surveillance, in this case, pre-kidnap surveillance. So getting all that data, and not only from the house where she was taken from her house, but also from the neighbors, because most people nowadays, they have these Ring cameras. They have, whether it's their own service provider through AT&T or it's a Ring camera, but most people nowadays have that camera, have that surveillance system in place. So that's definitely one of the things that law enforcement will do in those first 48 hours, is to go around the neighborhood and really get all that footage, so they can determine not only, again, on the same day, but also prior to that, if there was anything suspicious, any vehicles, persons that they could possibly identify.
Yeah, my only fear with neighbors' cameras in this particular case is the neighborhood itself. All the everyone's got at least an acre, and all the houses are set back with lots of vegetation in front. There's no street lights at all. But I guess if it's the middle of the night, perhaps the lights coming down the street could trigger them. But as we look at the neighborhood here, you get a feel for it. Everyone's got beautiful homes, but set back from the street. And And it's like in certain parts, it's even difficult to tell if there's a house there, depending upon where you're looking. But obviously a big part of it. Let's take a listen to more from the sheriff here, talking about the crime scene itself.
Has that scene been fully processed now? We saw deputies leave around 6 o'clock last night. We didn't see tape go up. You know, an Amazon driver was able to walk right up to the door. Is that pretty standard for how you handle this?
The scene is done. We're done with the residents. If we need to go back to get, maybe we want to do something with some other piece of evidence there, we contact the family and let them know. But we have turned that over to the family. I don't have the time, but it was sometime yesterday, I believe.
All right, Dr. Michael McCutcheon, I'll start with you on the timing of this. A lot of people are like, what, the scene's been returned already? Investigation begins on Sunday. By Monday night, I think early Monday night, the house was turned back to the family. They were done. What are your thoughts about the timing there?
In a case like this, they certainly have a lot of personnel there. That's not I don't want to say that's unusual because each crime scene is going to be different. And if there is not a lot of evidence to be collected, your crime scene can be processed quickly or more quickly than a scene that has a lot of evidence. So the timeline itself, I'm not too concerned about. They did mention that they did a lot of fingerprints and DNA swabs and trying to identify. I think now where it will go is that they have the evidence is they'll look to more digital evidence, maybe looking at geofencing, which would be tracking if there's any phones in the area at that particular time that the crime was committed, or doing a tower dump from cell phones. It's not as accurate as geofencing, but something like that. So I think that that's probably where they're going to start to analyze the evidence and then look at the digital footprint that was left.
Toby, your thoughts on that, but also your thoughts about this alleged, well, it isn't a ransom note. We just don't know if it's legit. What are your thoughts about that?
That's exactly what it is. We don't know if it's legit, but at this time, it appears there could be it certainly could be legit. Just considering the sheriff's reaction, and which is normal in an investigation like this, is that they're withholding information unless putting out information out there has a benefit to the investigation, i.e. getting information back from the public. But at this point, we don't know if it's legit, but I certainly think it can be, especially if in fact the clues it was described in that note, if that is truly in line with what was discovered at the crime scene. So that's obviously with law enforcement, how they would determine if in fact it is real or not. But as far as everything else, I mean, yeah, as Michael said, I think getting that cell phone dump, I know the FBI at this point is involved, Border Patrol is involved, CBP is involved, especially also due to the border nexus, right? We have to keep in mind the border is only an hour away, so there could be a very likelihood that she was taken across the border. It's a lot easy going south versus going north, so that's something that we have to consider. And there's just at this point, it is a multi-pronged investigation using a lot of different agencies, and they're all utilizing their best of their abilities. But also, we have to keep in mind these things take time, right? Like whether DNA evidence and waiting for the labs for them to come back and getting that cell phone data, analyzing it, and then cross-referencing it with potential targets and suspects. So all these things take time. So this is not something that's going to happen overnight.
Let's get to the chief, the sheriff, talking about the timeline.
A window of time from when she was last seen to when she was reported missing, and I know you guys are asking for help from the public. Is there any way to narrow down what time you might be offline? I know there was a report about a pacemaker dinging like around 2 o'clock in the morning. Is there any way to indicate to people, hey, look around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. to help them identify what they might have?
You know, I really don't want to get into narrowing down the time, because narrowing it down means we could miss some tips and leads. We're working on with the data we've submitted for investigative analysis. We're working to see if that time can be tightened up. But for now, we're going with what we told you earlier. She was dropped off at 9:30, and she was found to be missing at about 11 o'clock Sunday morning.
Okay, Mike, they're giving us a very wide timeline for reasons that the sheriff was very transparent about. But do you think the actual working timeline that they're on is much more specific at this point?
Yes, I think from what I understand that the watch that she had was connected to the pacemaker, so they have a tighter time. I understand that they don't want to be that specific for to put out to the public, but for an investigation, they're definitely. I think what really may make it be a break in this case is just old-fashioned detective work by looking at, we mentioned earlier of the cameras and finding at that time frame that they're looking at lights passing by, so now they can start to follow a vehicle, or somebody who delivers newspapers at 3 a.m. sees a car. Those type of things are going to be the tips that they have to analyze that can start to put them in the right direction before the actual fingerprint evidence, DNA evidence, digital evidence can come back. So I think that the timeline is going to be really important to start to gather information from the public and people who are out there at that time.
All right, let's take a listen to the sheriff here talking about blood.
There was blood that was found inside the house and you're testing it for DNA. How much blood and where was it?
I'm not saying there's blood inside that house or outside that house.
All right, he's not saying if there is blood or isn't blood, Toby, but all reports seem to indicate that there is some blood. What are your thoughts about an 84-year-old woman being the victim of an abduction and perhaps her blood being found at the scene?
Sure, it's very likely. It seemed like this was a forced entry, and there was earlier statements by the sheriff that she was grabbed from her bed, and then I understand he sort of retracted that statement. But if that's in fact the case, right, it's fight or flight that would have kicked in. So I'm sure she would have tried to resist. These guys were clearly violent and had bad intentions, and as part of that struggle, it's possible that she somehow got injured, or it's also possible that blood came from one of the attackers, right? That she truly was able to resist to a point where she was able to injure one of them. More likely it's her blood, but it's possible that it's the bad guy's blood. And clearly that would be, if that's the case, that would be a huge lead here for law enforcement. And if in fact that blood is on file also with the DNA database. But at this point, again, we don't know whose blood it is, but it certainly seems like that blood was in fact found based on all the prior reportings.
Big part of the story so far. Dr. Michael McCutcheon, Toby Braun, appreciate your time and your insight tonight. Thank you so much. All right, folks, when we come back, some new details and images from the scene itself.
We saw some things at the home that were concerning to us. We believe now, after we process that crime scene, that we do in fact have a crime scene, that we do in fact have a crime, and we're asking the community's help.
They're asking for the help. They're saying there's things at the crime scene. Well, we've got some video from the scene so we can show you some of those things that are a little bit troubling and tell a little bit of this story. Let's take a look. We have that video now. And this is the front entrance to the home, and there you see some blood right on the front stoop. And that's the welcome mat right in front there. Obviously, something criminal happened here, and the sheriff has said so from the beginning. So now you've got potential forced entry, you've got blood. Let's bring back in our think tank, Bob Bianchi, Sydney Rushing, Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Okay, I'm worried, Dr. Sue, 84 years old and I see blood. That's a bad combination. That goes all the way back to late Saturday night into early Sunday morning. It's now Tuesday. Each hour, each day, I think becomes more and more concerning. And I know early on, they were talking about the medication that she needed. If the person knew who she, knew about Nancy, I think they would, if it was someone who really knew her, would know that she needs the medication. So What are you thinking as you see blood, 84 years old, doesn't have the medication?
I know. You know, what's going through my mind, Vinnie, first of all, is how very, very sad this whole thing is. I mean, this woman obviously is innocent in whatever is going on, and it's really scary as to what has happened here. Now, you know, on the other hand, this could be her blood, or it could be the blood of the people that took her. But without having her medication that she probably needs every single day, you know, it's sad to think, but it doesn't look good in terms of her surviving as long as we hope that she will. I hope that she does survive, but again, we don't know. You know, there's so many unanswered questions, like what medicine was she taking? What did she need it for every single day? And so because of that, we just don't know what is going on, and that makes it even scarier at the moment. And whoever has her, and where is she? You know, is she sitting somewhere that is comfortable, or is she in a basement somewhere? I don't know. So all of these come into factor in terms of how she is medically.
Bob, so obviously you're the prosecutor, right? But there's competing interests here, aren't there? There's the prosecution trying to catch these people and make sure you can convict them. But on the other hand, there's an 84-year-old woman who you want to save. How do you balance those competing interests in pursuing this case? Because it seems like you've got to do anything and everything you can and as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Vinny. So not that we would, as prosecutors are investigating a case, ever break or intentionally stretch the constitutional principles here. But if there were a case in which you would bend as far as you could go, knowing that maybe somehow down the road evidence may be suppressed because you went over the line, you do it because a life is at risk here. What I found extremely compelling from a prosecutorial standpoint, and having stood in the position of that sheriff, is that while I think he did a good press conference and not giving out a lot of detail and information, I think that that's important. I didn't like two things in this investigation that get me very concerned about getting to her sooner than later. Number one, you never tell the bad guy who's listening, I have no evidence, I have no leads, I don't know anything, we need the community's help, which of course you do, but you do it a certain way because you want to put pressure on the bad people. You want them to make a mistake, you want them to force an error, and that does not do that when you say it. Number two, I disagree completely and have never been involved in any major crime scenario in my career where we released a crime scene within a couple of hours. You never know evidence that may develop, witness statements that may be taken, even interviews of the suspect if you get one, where later that crime scene becomes important to go back. I can't count how many times we have had to go back and reprocess a crime scene. Those two things get me nervous in terms of, is this amateur hour here in terms of the investigation? Because to your point, the clock is ticking with an 84-year-old woman, blood on the ground. We, as an EMT, I can tell you, don't have time to wait.
You know, the other thing, Sydney, I've heard numbers that are extremely low, but it's probably the normal Crime Stoppers type of reward money. Are you surprised that we're sitting here on Tuesday and there's not some huge reward up, especially because time is of the essence for someone to come forward with information? Because I think if you are low enough on the chain of humanity that you would take this 84-year-old woman from her home, you are probably friends with people just like yourself, people who wouldn't mind turning you in very quickly for some money, like real money.
Yeah, and that's the thing though, right, is that it's how much is enough to be enticing? Because I'm not sure what the amount is that they put on the ransom note. They may be asking for millions, right? And that's not something that I don't think that anyone's going to put up on the Crime Stoppers. So yes, there's some low numbers out there, but it also is hard because it's what number is going to be good enough to get them to come forward. So, you know, I think that's good.
I'm looking for a rat. I'm looking for a rat.
Right. Well, that's the thing, though, is if this Is it more than one person? I think that's another thing that we have to consider, is because how would they get her out of the house so willingly without her making any sounds and, things like that? Is there more than one person here? Is this a group, a concerted effort? And how many people are pushing this forward to try and, get money from this? So there may be a rat, but they also may have all their I's dotted, T's crossed. They took the camera from the scene, allegedly. The sheriff was, he gave very little information. But again, I agree with, you don't give out that you don't have evidence. You want to put that pressure on. We have blood at the scene. It doesn't match, her blood, because then that person's like, oh no, like we got DNA coming back. We've found some other things that are giving us leads. You don't tell them that you don't have nothing.
Yeah.
I find that.
She was supposed to go to church, and that's what, triggered the whole investigation, that something was wrong because Nancy didn't show up to church. Savannah posted this on Instagram. We believe in prayer. We believe in voices raised in unison, in love, in hope. We believe in goodness. We believe in humanity. Above all, we believe in Him. Thank you for lifting your prayers with ours for our beloved mom, our dearest Nancy, a woman of deep conviction, a good and faithful servant. Raise your prayers with us and believe with us that she will be lifted by them in this very moment. We need you. He will keep in perfect peace those whose hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. A verse of Isaiah for all time and for all of us. Bring her home. Big thanks to Bob Bianchi, Sidney Rushing, Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Great to have you aboard. When we come back, folks, something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates two parents murdered while their young children slept just feet away. Police arrest a vascular surgeon with a deeply personal connection to one of the victims. What evidence led detectives to accuse Dr. Michael McKee of executing a calculated double homicide? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
The tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board and see what's happening. Arrested for murder. No, not Jill Biden, but her ex-husband, William Stevenson, who was married to Jill from 1970 to 1975 when she met Joe Biden, or the president, right? Has been arrested for murder. Unbelievable. He's charged with killing 64-year-old Linda Stevenson, his wife, on December 28th. We'll keep an eye on that one for you. I need you to keep your eyes on the TV screen right now because we have a missing child who needs your help. This is Alexis Reyes Sanchez. Alexis, 17 years old, missing from Clinton, South Carolina since the 29th. If you see Alexis, pick up the phone. Make a call, make a difference. 911. 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Clinton Department of Public Safety in South Carolina. That number's on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get Alexis to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.